We're going to talk a little bit now about the issues. This is where it gets tough. And so these two individuals are going to talk a little bit about what the issues are. And so here we go. This young man over here is Pastor Eric Wooden. And this right here, she belongs to me.
That was our intro, huh?
Oh, hi. So what happened was we took a nationwide vote of all blacks, and they chose me to speak on behalf of the entire race. And Eric, I think you did something similar.
I did. I only got 90% of the whites, but so I'm not speaking for all of us tonight, but most of us. Yeah.
Right. So clearly, we cannot speak on behalf of an entire race. Even within one race, there's so many different experiences and perspectives. But what we wanted to do was to not only have a time of prayer and worship, which is awesome, has been awesome, by the way, has it not been? Been amazing. We also wanted to take a few minutes just to talk about a few of the top issues that have been really at the forefront given the past events of the recent days. And this is not going to cover every possible answer or solution, but tonight really is about initiating dialogue, having courageous conversations, trying to understand what the other person thinks. It's the spirit of Philippians 2:3 that says, put your brother's interest above your own. Have this mind like Christ. A spirit of humility that says, can you lower yourself and elevate the perspective of another? And sometimes we cannot do that because we don't even know their perspective. And so we want to take a few minutes to just touch on those issues very quickly, just so you can have something to begin your own dialogues. Is that all right? Okay. So one of the first things that has come up that I've had my own discussions about has been the difference between all lives matter and Black Lives Matter. So that issue has come up several times amongst my black friends, amongst my white friends, amongst my non-black and non-white friends who are like, what? Why I matter, right? And so they're just confused as to what matters. And so I try to explain to them that, yes, you can have a broad context of something that is important, but when there is an injustice or a particular group that is the focus of a moment, you might see additional energy or effort geared toward that group. It does not mean that I don't think all lives matter for me to say that Black lives matter. And so I explained to them, I said, it's like if I walked in the middle of a Susan G. Komen March for the Cure, and they promote cures and solutions for what kind of cancer? Right, everybody knows that. And so if I walked in there and said, my grandfather died of prostate cancer, all cancer is bad, they would probably say, we know, but that's not why we're here today. And so you can support broader issues and still support niche issues within broader topics. What do you think about that, Eric?
Yeah.
Speak for the whites.
On behalf of white America.
Back to you.
No. If someone's recording this, turn it off. No, my disclaimer. Here's my disclaimer on the front end because what we're letting you in on is our office conversations. If you sat in our office, you were anything but politically correct. But it's an environment where we can say wrong stuff and be given grace for it. And so I just want my disclaimer on the front end is I'm going to say some things wrong tonight. I'm going to say wrong words or wrong phrases, and some of you have an opportunity to get mad at me or post it on YouTube or whatever you need to do. But part of the ability to have the conversation is the freedom to say wrong things because I'm coming from my perspective. So here's my perspective on it. For all the non-black people out there who are posting all lives matter, blue lives matter, stop. And here's my analogy. It's about as effective as when your spouse brings an issue to you, then you turn around and point out their issue, right? How many of you that work for in your marriage? When she says, I need to put my bowl away, and I say, well, you don't put your clothes away. What I do is I minimize what she's dealing with. And so I think when as Jada said, all lives do matter. But when I go to the doctor because my appendix is bursting, I don't need to know that my other organs matter too. I need the one that may cause me to die to be taken care of. And so the idea is we have an injustice and mistreatment of a specific group of people, and we need to expose that so that we can have some change in there. And so I think that's one thing I would say. The other thing for a white person, I need to understand how to help, and I need to understand what it is I'm engaging in, if that makes sense. So I've just, because I want to know, I do research, and so I've Googled videos, I've looked at the Black Lives Matter website, and I'm probably more confused now than I was. No, really, because on the Black Lives Matter website, the three women that kind of started the movement are pushing for all types of equality for queer and transgender black women. They're pushing for all kinds of stuff, and I thought it was just the police brutality deal. So I think for me, I need to understand what I'm engaging in, and then how do I do that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just closing on that topic, just for your own discussion, I think, too, as when you're talking to black people, I need to clarify in personal dialogue what my own grievance is. Because sometimes I get behind a hashtag or get behind a movement, and I'm not even educated on that movement. And so then you go educate yourself on the movement, and I say, oh, no, that's not what I meant. And so the personal dialogue is really where you get your faith in action, and that can grow as we begin to understand each other. So I think that's a great point. Great point. Okay, our second issue that has come up has been the idea of black-on-black crime being the cause of death for blacks versus police injustice. And a lot of times we see this discussion where people will say, well, black-on-black crime kills more African Americans, more black people than police injustice. Or they may even begin to quote other statistics and numbers to say that more white people die at the hands of police than black people do. And that can be a little bit skewed. And Eric and I had an interesting conversation about that. Do you want to talk about statistics for a little bit there, Eric?
No, to me, that's another one of those areas. Just stop. That's probably been one of my biggest areas of disappointment on Facebook, right? Because everybody's an expert on Facebook, and everybody's got, courage to boast on Facebook. But just seeing meme after meme of, last year, 232 blacks killed, 414 whites killed by police. Well, look at the demographics. That's still not even, right? The country's 67% white. And so I've seen memes posted of you're more likely to get struck by lightning than killed by a cop. None of that matters. The point is, if I have one child who dies because of mistreatment or injustice, that's important. So it's not the percentage, it's not the... So just stop. We're comparing apples and oranges. Yeah, there's more people die from stroke and high blood pressure. I get it. But we're trying to deal with a systemic mistreatment of a specific group of people. Let's stay there. Mm-hmm. So that would be my...
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I'll add one more thought to that. I was just actually having a discussion with one of our praise team members back there, and she made the point as well that it's a different issue when you're talking about your peer-to-peer groups versus the group that you're supposed to feel safe and protected by. And so, for example, we don't want our students having sex in high school, right? But we don't respond the same way as when a teacher has sex with a student. It's just a very different thing when there's a group that you expect protection and safety from and you feel like you're on edge. It's like, I can talk about my sister, but you can't talk about my sister. Everybody knows the family rules, right? And so what we're trying to do is help us to understand how the family dynamic works, that even as we resolve our issues, and I am certainly not negating the issues in the black community, they are there and they are real. But we need the freedom and the space to work those things out, still feeling the same amount of safety and protection as our white brothers and sisters. And so when you talk about that, be very careful because it, again, can minimize the issue and it becomes divergent to what the true issue is, being able to feel protected and safe by those who are given that charge for us. Right? Good deal. All right. Y'all don't have to clap every time. It's okay. It's all right. We're getting paid later. Where's my husband? Are we getting paid? No? Oh. Just checking. Sometimes you throw it out in a crowd, then you can bring it up for accountability, but okay. Okay, there's another issue I want to bring up, and that is the idea of, okay, are y'all ready? This one's a little tense. Y'all all right? Y'all love Jesus still? Come on, good Father. Remember him? All right. Okay, that's because one of the issues I want to talk about really quickly is the idea that very often the discussion of race is just plain uncomfortable for white people. There's not a comfort level because there's not an intrinsic understanding of that context. And on the flip side of that, you have the discomfort that is felt by many non-blacks, many whites in that discussion. But you also have the demandingness of many blacks in that discussion. And sometimes we come to the table and we are so frustrated, we say, I need you to understand what I'm feeling right now today. And if you cannot relate, and if you're not ready to take up your sign and march with me, you must be a racist. I'm not exaggerating. And so if we want to keep dialogue, if we want to stay engaged, then how do we begin to understand that discomfort that may be there for some, remember not speaking for everyone, and that demandingness or that defensiveness that comes from impatience and frustration that may be there for African Americans. So, Eric, discomfort, that's yours.
Discomfort, white discomfort.
White discomfort.
You're making me uncomfortable right now. What do I do?
You need...
So yeah, so I'm comfortable, one, because I work at this church, but I'm still uncomfortable.
Yes.
So I think when one, as she said, if there's a demanding approach, that can be perceived as aggressive, and an attack always elicits a defensive response. So I think sometimes that's why you see Black Lives Matter, we got to post All Lives Matter, or Police Lives. So we feel like we're responding to something. But I think for white people, have some grace, understanding. I don't even know what words are okay to use sometimes. So is black okay, or do I have to go African American every time? And some of you giggle, but how do I know? Because I've used different words and different people have looked at me different ways. So I don't. Now there's clearly some that are off, but
Don't give examples.
No.
Don't give examples. We know.
But so there's a discomfort there, and then you've got to give us time to respond, because, and I'm speaking for me personally, this may not be everybody. I have no idea what it feels like to be discriminated based on race. No idea. I've never been looked at funny in a store. I've never been pulled over. It's to the point I never even think about my race. Never. I never go anywhere thinking, hey, I'm white. Right. Hey, it's great to be white today. I don't. There's not a pride in it. There's not a feeling bad about it. I don't even think about it. And so it takes me a while to get to a place to go, oh, okay. Perfect example. I had some guys over Saturday night for UFC fights. You can judge me on that if you want. I had like one fan. That's pretty. But in the middle of the night, here's a perfect example. In the middle of the night, one of the guys' wives called to tell him that he had left his wallet at home. So I'm thinking, someone just said, I'm thinking, why is she bugging you about that, man? I forget my wallet all the time. I said, you need gas money to get home. I don't even have a place in my mind to process, we started talking about it, and he thought, oh, great, if I get pulled over on the way home and I don't have my license. Me, if I get pulled over, I'll be like, hey, dude, I don't got my license, sorry. And if he's a mean cop, he'll probably write me up. If he's a nice cop, he'll let me go. So I don't even have a place anywhere inside my paradigm for understanding discrimination based on race. So there's a discomfort even engaging in the conversation, because I know I'm going to say something wrong. I know I don't fully understand. But I need to be able to, if we're going to change the tide, I need to be able to ask stupid questions. I need to be able to say things that are unintentionally offensive. And you need to educate me on it, I guess I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Are you guys clapping because I'm uneducated and ignorant? Well, it was like it got loud at the end. Yeah, he's ignorant. Yeah.
He don't know. Yeah. I think that's so important. We were talking about some of the relationships I have with some of my white friends, and I'm like their black safe place. And sometimes I'm serious. And when you have those authentic friendships, you can say, don't you ever say that in front of another black person. They might not love Jesus. And you need to be able to have those conversations. And let me tell you why it's important. Because one of those friendships actually started because she said something offensive to me. And in that moment, everything in me, historic and what my parents said and every experience I had raised up in that moment. And the Holy Spirit had to squash that moment and say, wait a minute, let's take context. Someone can make a remark that's racially offensive and not be racist at their heart. Just like you can make remarks, Jada, that are prejudicial all the time. And that doesn't mean you have discrimination for that group in your heart. So look at who she is. Look at this friendship. Was this just a mistake she made because she didn't know? And you'll know because if you have an honest dialogue, you'll know by her response. And when I challenged her on it, she was like, what? I said, yes, let's have lunch. And I am serious, and let me tell you, I know we're laughing a lot here, but that's because the issue carries enough tension on its own. But truly, sometimes when you are the offended person, when you're the offended group, it feels unfair for you to have to extend the olive branch and make it easier for your offender to make peace with you. But that's what the Bible calls us to do. And being able to do that, and in that moment, not all the time, I had a moment where I could be like Christ, where Corinthians tells us he gave us the ministry of reconciliation. He initiated first. When we were running the other way, when we were guilty, he reached out for us. And so there are moments, let me talk to my black brothers and sisters, where in the midst of your offense and your hurt, give them the opportunity to prove without fail that they are unteachable, have no interest, and they are absolutely racist, will not change at their core. Let them fail many times over. Give grace, because there are dialogues and divine interactions that we're missing because our offense is shutting the door so quickly. And so because I was able to talk to her, we've had an engaging dialogue for many years now, and it's been educational on both sides. And so I would say for those that might feel that demandingness, that offense, Eric really helped me to remember that you're talking to someone who actually has no concept of your paradigm. Doesn't mean they don't want to know, just means they don't know. And so how can we be intentional about staying engaged and not just shutting down at the first sign of offense? All right. Okay. And our last issue is the idea of personal responsibility versus social injustice. And that comes up in conversation when people say, well, if you would just obey authority, if you would stay out of trouble, if you didn't have a criminal record. You may notice in the news that when some of these men have died at the hands of police officers, they are then vilified because it's like the girl who files the rape charge, but you need to make sure that she was promiscuous so you can nullify her rape charge. And so that's what's happening. So you've got people who have been victims of crimes, and instead of fighting for the victim, we're fighting to prove that maybe they kind of deserved it. Because look how they lived, and look what their parenting was like, and look at their criminal record. And personal responsibility is super, super important, but it's a separate issue from when you have suffered a wrongful death. And so one of the things we want to encourage you to talk about is making sure that we are promoting personal responsibility, but not that it's mutually exclusive to the justice that we should expect as citizens of the United States of America. Any thoughts on that? Back to you.
I have nothing intelligent to add to that conversation. No, I would. It kind of goes with it. I would just say sometimes this idea of social justice, right? That the only way the mistreatment changes is if we take personal responsibility, as Jada was saying. And I think when you talk about social justice, we can approach it from a man-centered view, which says government is savior and it's government's job to change it, or we can do it from a God-centered view, which says Jesus is savior and it's the individual's job to step in and do something. And so if it's going to change, we all have to get engaged. We can't stand on the side and expect the police or our representatives or whoever to change it, but we have to step in and make a difference.
Yeah. So we thank you for your few minutes of indulging us. Have a good evening.